Thank you very much. I hope that what you had a chance to see there, although it's very difficult in a room like this to actually see it working in its full way, because in a classroom it works quite differently, because the images actually come out to the child, so they appear to sit sort of right in front of the child. I'll just try and move to this screen. I don't know, are you going to show now the film about the project or not? Okay, this is a film that summarizes the project, which just gives you a little taste of the research that we've done through the countries in Europe. We'll just get the sound happening.
Much more exciting.
There's lots of wows, isn't this amazing?
The most amazing technological leap.
That really does help with some issues.
DLP technology from Texas Instruments is a precise digital imaging chip that powers today's leading projectors and digital cinema systems. The amazing DLP chip consists of up to millions of tiny microscopic mirrors which reflect light digitally to create a stunning image. DLP technology brought the world a fresh vision of 3D projection in the cinema and home. Now that same 3D projection technology can pull children into an exciting new immersive world to teach them maths, science, geography and history like never before. Bring human anatomy to life, dissect a frog that doesn't get your hands dirty, watch as pupils immerse themselves in a tour through the solar system and beyond. Known as the Learning in Future Education or LIFE project, a team of researchers led by Professor Dr. Bamford have undertaken a detailed investigation on the impact of 3D on pupils' learning. The research project involved over 700 students, 47 teachers and 15 schools across France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Turkey, the UK and Sweden. The goal of the LIFE project was to determine the most effective types of 3D experience and to measure their value and impact on pupils' learning and achievement.
The initial reactions of the pupil to 3D were absolutely phenomenal. It really excited them. Their motivation was very high.
I really can see that the children that have difficulties, that when they put on the glasses, they sit up and they're really like alert and they participate more.
I like 3D because the pictures is beautiful and I learn more.
We have done some tests to see whether or not it does make a difference to learning, and we have found that students who have been revising with 3D perform better than students who haven't been revising with 3D for the same test.
It's really enjoyable. It almost brings the whole lesson to life, and it's just a really social aspect to have in the classroom. It's really good.
So the difference between using the 3D and a 3D model is that with the model, only a small number of pupils can see because it's obviously fairly small. But with the 3D, all the girls can actually see it at the same time. And also things can move within it, which they can't in the model.
I love the way you can really see it in your mind, and because it's 3D, it's just really interesting and fun, and it really captivates you. And you can just imagine it in life.
Children reacted differently on 3D because they asked more questions during the lesson, because they asked, turn the picture around, or can we see inside the heart, how does the blood flow? They asked me to do that, and it was all possible.
One particular class were taught in 2D using a book. The other class, both 11-year-olds, were taught in 3D using a projection, and both were asked exactly the same task. Make a model of what you have learned. The children who had been taught in 3D made 3D models, and the children who had been taught in 2D made 2D flat models. It was quite amazing.
I would recommend 3D to other teachers. It helps students to visualise difficult concepts, helps them understand.
All you need to set up a 3D classroom is a DLP-ready projector, a computer, 3D glasses and 3D content software. Over 300,000 3D-ready DLP projectors have already been sold, with 70 models in 14 brands available on the market today. With a 3D-ready DLP projector in the classroom, you and your pupils are ready to take the next step in the evolution of learning.
Thank you. What I'd like to do now, if we could just make the lights a little bit more even so we can see each other a little bit better, that would be nice. I want to talk to you about the research project, because I have to say I'm not a technology person. I started my career as a teacher, my career is as an academic. I'm also a director of education, so like a civil servant in charge of education, I have about 200 schools that I'm directly responsible for. So my interest is not on technology, my interest is on learning. And so what I was focused on in this piece of research was, would it make a difference to learning? I should also say I'm the mother of 4 children who are now teenagers or older, and it was also important that I could see the way they learn, and I can see that they use technology all the time in their general learning that they do at home, and for them this was very natural. So what difference did it make from a research point of view? Now, we did this as a scientific study, so it was a very detailed and traditional scientific study in that we had one group who had the 3D, and we had other groups who didn't have the 3D, and they did exactly the same lessons, but the difference was whether they had 3D or not. The project was undertaken with children roughly between the ages of 10 and 13 years of age. And that was an important age to choose, because this is the age when children move from working with very practical materials to having to work in concepts. And for many children, this is where their learning somehow goes wrong, because they find, I understood it when I was using the blocks or I was using the actual material, but when I have to just do it in my head, I can't really understand it. So that was the age group. These are the countries, as you saw on the map, the countries where the research was done. There was also a study undertaken in Finland, and there was some studies that occurred in South America and other parts, but these were the countries involved directly in the research side. It involved a lot of pupils, a lot of teachers, because we wanted to have enough numbers of classes working on this so we could really see the patterns at an international level and to see whether it really works as something to include in education. I won't go in detail through all the methods, and there is a report. There is a short summary report, or there is a longer report. You can get those reports in English on the Texas Instrument website, and so if you're interested in getting more of the information or very particular information about different things, please look at the longer reports, because this is a very short summary that I'm going to give you. But as I mentioned, what we had is we had a 2D class, and we had a class having exactly the same content, but with the addition of the 3D into the classroom. Let's talk about the impact on results, because this is where I became quite excited by this, because as a researcher, I have to say at the beginning, I thought, you know, I've seen a lot of technology come and go from classrooms, and will it really make a difference? And the significant fact was that it made a very big difference in how children learnt. When we looked at the results of the pre-test to the post-test with children from all of those different countries, what we saw was that in the 2D class, so in the control group, only about 52% of children actually improved after 6 to 8 weeks of the lesson. Now, put very simply, what that means is in a typical case, in a usual situation, only half the children are actually learning after you've done some work for 6 to 8 weeks. So that's not a really good result, because it means roughly half the children are not learning. When we then looked at the children who had the addition of the 3D, we see that those results changed quite markedly. So it hasn't got the pointer working. Okay, so it went from being half the children, 52% learning, right up to 86% of children who improved. So the number of children improving in their results greatly increased. What was also interesting, we looked at the difference in the scores for those children who did improve. And we noticed that the rate of improvement was also twice as much for the 3D children as it was for the 2D children. So for example, in the 2D class, so in the control class, the children only improved by about 8%. So their results went up by about 8%. In the 3D class, on average, the results went up 17.1%, so almost double the rate of improvement for individual children. So not only did more children get higher results, but the children who got higher results got a much higher result, if that makes sense. What we also noticed, because I was concerned a little bit with the glasses, as whether or not it might improve the children's results, but what would it do to the atmosphere of the classroom? Because if you have a lot of children wearing these dark glasses, maybe they become sort of like robots and just sit there, you know, like this in the classroom. Now, some teachers would say that's a good thing because they're not noisy and they're not naughty. But we know for learning, we need children to actually ask questions. We need children to relate to the material that they're learning. So we checked how children changed in other ways, not just in their test results. So the first thing we looked at was how well do the children remember after the 3D unit has finished? Because maybe they'll remember it then, but forget it a little bit later on. What we found was that the children who had had the 3D remembered more, they were able to give more detail, and they were able to describe a lot more of how the object functions. So for example, if they were describing the heart, they didn't just name the parts of the heart, they could name more parts of the heart, but they could also say, it does this, it does that, it uses, you know, pushes the blood around. They could talk about the functions of the heart. They were also more likely to ask questions. So we actually saw an increase in the number of questions children asked, and they were more likely to give answers that went beyond just what the teacher had said. So they started to ask questions like, but what if something happens to the valve in your heart? So to ask questions that went beyond just what the teacher was saying. Now, one thing, of course, that every teacher wants is for the children to behave well in their class. And I have to say, in this school, it's not a problem because the children do behave very, very well. But in some of the classes that we did the research, a lot of children had behaviour problems. In one class, there were 8 children who had attention deficit disorder, some sort of problems with giving attention to the teacher. So teachers were very interested in what would happen to the children's behaviour if they introduced 3D. And this is where I think the research gets very, very exciting. Because what we did is we tracked the children's attention in class. What we noticed on average, that children in the classrooms, only 46% of children pay attention. So probably like now, some of you are looking around and some of you are looking in your bag and some of you are talking and some of you are asleep, I don't know. But only about half of you or less than half of you are probably paying attention to what I'm saying now. And that's quite typical in a classroom. On an average classroom, the research showed only 46% of children were paying attention. So actually more than half were not taking any notice of the teacher. When we turned on the 3D, that rate of attention changed very radically, because then you saw 92% of children paying attention. So the children stopped whatever else they were doing and concentrated on what the teacher was saying. But then something very, very interesting happened. Because you'd expect as a researcher, the children aren't paying much attention. You turn on the 3D, they start paying attention. You turn back off the 3D and they stop paying attention again. But that didn't happen. In fact, what happened is they started not paying much attention. You turned on the 3D and they paid lots of attention. And then they actually paid even more attention, because 5 minutes following the 3D, so after we'd turned off the 3D, but they'd had the 3D, it went up to 96% of children paying attention. So what happened? Why did the attention increase even after you turned the 3D off? Well, the reason was because the children started asking very interesting questions. And so even those children who weren't paying attention when they had their glasses on began to pay attention because they were interested in the questions that the other children were asking. So you saw this very high increase of attention. And what was interesting is that high level of attention continued right until the end of the lesson. So the children stayed being much more interested in what the teacher was saying. It seemed to work particularly well with boys, and it worked particularly well with children who otherwise have big problems in their learning with paying attention. Just some photos from here. This is actually this school. What did the children think of 3D? Well, you heard some of their comments here, and their comments were very interesting in how they responded. The big comment that they made was that I understand it because it's real and because I see it. And this is because the majority of children don't learn by listening. We know that a very small percentage of children actually learn by listening. Most children learn by seeing. And so the chance to see it and see it in a very solid way meant the children were more likely to learn. They also said it was less boring, that they often got bored in school, and this stopped them being quite so bored. Also, the way that with the 3D, you could actually see not just the whole thing, but the other parts of the thing. So you could see the heart working, you could go into the cells and see what the cells were doing, and so on. And the children were very fond, they really much enjoyed using the 3D. What was also interesting was that when they were using the 3D, very quickly we saw that the teachers started to take a different role in the way they taught because of the 3D. Now, we didn't tell the teachers to teach any differently than normal. We just gave them the 3D. By the way, I should just say it's very easy to get started in 3D because you don't need to go out and buy a whole lot of things. You don't need special sort of fancy equipment because you need just a projector that is DLP ready. And most projectors these days that are being sold are DLP ready. Just check it before you buy one, that it will be able to do 3D. You can get a lot of 3D content now freely available, so often you can download it or you can get it for very low cost or for free. The only thing you need to buy are the glasses, and the price of the glasses is coming down and down and down every month. You can show it quite easily on the wall of a classroom. This is a picture from a classroom in Italy, and this school had very low levels of resources. It had very poor internet connection, and it wasn't a very advanced school in terms of technology. The classroom is just showing it on the wall of the classroom. There's no special screen, there's no special equipment. But what's interesting about this image is the person in the blue shirt is actually the teacher. And the teacher is standing back, and the children who are actually gathered around the front are teaching the lesson. Because quite quickly, the children wanted to have a turn to use the technology. And so they were starting to actually teach the lesson. And it was a very exciting lesson for English teachers because there was the science teacher working alongside the English teacher. And actually they were teaching the lesson in English, even though they were Italian children. This is just another example of the teachers working. So what did the teachers think of this technology? How did it work for the teachers? Well, you can see some of the comments there, but the teachers reported it was very successful, especially with the boys. that the children are into technology and expect technology and want to use good technology. The children's reaction was very much like, wow, you know, because it's hard in this situation for you to get the real effect of it. And I really suggest when we finish my presentation, when you go outside, have a chance to play on some of the stalls that are out there, because when you see it in a classroom, the object isn't sitting back there. The object is in front of you. It's here, and it's right there in front of you. You can see it as if it's hovering in the space right in front of your eyes. And that's very exciting for everybody, but especially for the children. Once again, you see a really nice example of where the teacher is actually sitting amongst the children as he's doing his work. Because with the 3D glasses on, it makes more sense for you to actually sit with the children. This teacher did a very lovely lesson because, and it was quite by accident, he had on a white t-shirt. He's a teacher from the Netherlands. And he was showing the 3D heart. And he happened to walk in front of the projector. And the heart started to show in 3D on his chest. And so then he started to do the lesson with this 3D heart actually beating on his chest as he was standing in front of the class. You know, an exciting moment that just happened by accident. This comment, I think, is a good summary of the sort of comments that the teachers made in relation to learning. They found that the children understood it because they saw how it worked. They could see it in a way that they'd never realised it was like that. Simple things, understanding that, you know, how the 3D area works, how you're able to get through the heart. They hadn't understood that on a flat model. They hadn't understood that from their plastic diagrams they had. Also, it was very good when the children were revising, ready for their tests, because they were able to look at the image and they could turn the labels off and ask the children, what's happening now? What's that thing called that's doing that? And the children were coming up with those names and coming up with those ideas. You saw that in the film, the very short film. But I think that was fascinating with the children from Catherine's school, that when they had learned about the plant cell, they never realised that the plant cell was solid. Because they'd only learnt it like a diagram, they thought that plant cells were just flat things, like a sort of flat things lying down. They hadn't realised that they're solid. And this understanding was very important, this, you know, actually seeing it, aha, that's why it's like it is. And you can see her making that 3D model, being able to show how it worked, understanding the structure of the cell. We also interviewed and did a lot of research with parents, because parents are very important in education, especially if you run a school. You have to say, well, we want to have money to develop this idea, this technology. Is it going to work? Is it something that parents see as being a good idea? Well, what the parents said to us was initially they doubted it. They thought, well, okay, it might be all right, but is it just like taking the child to a movie? Once they had seen it themselves, they suddenly realised how important it was. And they also described a lot that their children were very keen to come to school when there was 3D on. And I like this, if you go down to the third point, my daughter was actually sick on Friday, but she wanted to come to school because of the 3D. You know, she wasn't going to miss that in her lesson. The last one is actually one of the stories that came from one of the parents here, because she herself, when she saw the structure of the ear, was totally amazed. And she said, I never really understood how these things worked. So it was very powerful to the parents and to the children. I'm going to finish up there, but I wanted to just give you a few things just to get you thinking and to give you a start. As I said, the first thing, which I think is the most important thing about using 3D in the classroom, is that it is easy to get started. You don't need a lot of equipment. It's not like you have to put up a special board or a screen, or you can start if you've got the projector, and we've got some projectors here. I know there's a raffle at the end when they're giving away some projectors. So you can have, you've got the projector, that's all you need to start. You've got your glasses, and then you're ready to go. Try to start to use it in the way that makes sense for you to use it. Also, what I have to say is there's a lot of companies now starting to make content. And we need more and more content. We need content in Turkish language. Please develop content yourself. If you can't develop it, ask the companies to develop it for you, because you're the teachers. You know what you need, and you know what suits your curriculum. And people are very excited to make you things. So go out and say to people, I need this. Can we make it? Can we develop it? It's great for science and mathematics, but think of other subjects that you might be able to use it in. Think of art. Think of music. Like the children had a very good idea. They said, what if I was learning an instrument? I could have a virtual music teacher who could show me how to do the chords, and I could practice at home. Think of exciting ways to do it and ask the companies to make the things for you. I think it's very good in a school to work alongside a group of companies. And I want to say very much a big thanks to the companies, many companies, who supported this research. TI led on the research and other companies supported it. And that's because they're now reacting to the sorts of things that we're saying to them. So for example, we were very unhappy with the glasses for children. They were too wide, they were too heavy, they were uncomfortable for the children to wear. We went back to the companies and said, we don't like these glasses, and already the companies are working on different ways to make new types of glasses, new styles, lighter, more durable for the classroom, and so on. So please work closely and give your feedback and give your comments. Do make use of playing with the things that are there today and try it. You don't have to use it every lesson. You don't have to use it all lesson. Good teaching is still good teaching. No amount of technology will make bad teaching into good teaching. But you can use it as another thing to make your lessons better, to keep the children interested, and to help a child learn who may not understand it when they've just looked in a book. They need something else to help them to learn. And the last thing is just a very quick story which comes from a classroom in Paris. The class had a very good teacher. He was a science teacher, and he was a very good teacher, and he did an excellent lesson. The lesson was about the heart, and he started the lesson by showing a small video of a man who sort of goes, and sort of collapses on the ground. Then he said to the children, what's happened to the man? Do you have any ideas? And the children said, well, maybe the man has had a heart attack. And then he asked the children, well, how can you have a heart attack? What would cause a heart attack? And they then had to read in their textbooks some ideas about how the heart works and come up with some theories as to how the man had had his heart attack. Then the teacher actually had the hearts of the sheep, and he had lots of these sheep's hearts around the classroom, and he was going to get the children to dissect it. So the children had to cut the hearts up and had to see the various parts. And first of all, he was shocked because these children were 13, but many of them had never before done any cooking or anything, even in France, so they didn't know how to cut the heart up, and they were, and of course it smells, so the children are complaining, this smell and so on, and the blood, but they cut the heart up. Then after that, he had a plastic model of the body, the traditional science models, and he had the heart and he showed the children, and then he showed them the 3D, so the projection. At the end of the lesson, I interviewed the children and I said, actually, you had 3 things that were in 3D in that lesson. You had the actual sheep's heart, because it's 3D. You had the plastic model of the heart, because it was also a sort of a 3D model of a body. And you had the 3D projection. Which one did you prefer? I thought that the children would all like cutting up the actual heart, right? They all said, 100% said the virtual 3D. And I said, why did you prefer the virtual 3D? And they said, because it is more real. And I think that's a very important point. To young people today, the virtual is sometimes more real than the actual thing. They live in this virtual world, they're very aware of it, and the virtual allowed them to see things that they couldn't see in the real sheep's heart. They couldn't see the oxygen transferring between the blood. They could see that in the 3D model. So it allowed them to see things that they could only imagine in their mind before when they were reading it in a book. So I just encourage you to try it, have a go, see if it works for you in the subjects that you teach, have a play with the technology and enjoy it, have fun with it. Thank you.